Hey folks, I wanted to do a storytime video about something that I remember very, very vividly, which really kind of sticks in my mind, happened a few years back. So, as folks may know, I'm from a very, very small town in Ohio. The town I grew up in was roughly only about 10,000 people, and it's a very, very conservative and Republican place. This was in about 2005 that this happened, my senior year of high school. And, I mean, at that time, my town was very, very conservative. I mean, if you didn't support George Bush and the war in Iraq, the next question was, why don't you go move to some other country? Why do you hate our troops so much? Very, very evangelical, a lot of religious folks in my town. Only about 10,000 people. It's kind of a rural area, farming background, a lot of Mennonites, very conservative religious groups, stuff like that. That's where I'm from. Anyhow, I was a senior, and that year I was part of a program at my school where we got college credit for helping and being kind of teachers' assistants. It was college credit. It was what they call like post-secondary, where you're in high school, but you're getting college credit. You're taking a college course in education. So every day, I would go over to the elementary school, and I was helping this fourth grade teacher. And I would help her for 2 hours every day, and then I would take this education course in the evenings, and I got college credit for it. So anyway, I was in the program, and it was getting toward Christmas break or winter break at the school. And so I went to the teacher and I said, hey, why don't I do some lessons? One day I'll do Christmas, the next day I'll do Hanukkah, and the third day I'll do Kwanzaa, and we can learn about the different winter holidays. That was kind of an idea I had. Well, this fourth grade teacher, she said, that's a great idea. She said that, at that point, getting close to winter break, they have a lot of downtime, and she thought that would be very educational for the kids to learn about the different holidays. So the first day came around. I taught the kids about Christmas. They all knew all about it. Most of them were from very religious families. I mean, they all celebrated Christmas. Everyone in the class celebrated Christmas. I don't think any of the kids celebrated any other holiday. That was fun. Next, we did Hanukkah. A few kids knew about Hanukkah. They knew about the menorah and stuff like that. And they knew some about the Old Testament and the Bible and all of that. So that was interesting. But then the third day, we did Kwanzaa. And keep in mind, everyone in this classroom was white. I'm white. The kids were all white. The teacher herself was white. Everyone was white. But we did Kwanzaa. And I got to tell you, these kids must have thought Kwanzaa was just the coolest thing ever. They were just fascinated by it. It was just the coolest thing they had ever heard of. And it was actually kind of a lucky thing for me because the 7 themes or the 7 nights of Kwanzaa were actually their vocabulary words for the year. The 7 nights of Kwanzaa: unity, self-determination, collective work and responsibility, cooperative economics, purpose, creativity, and faith. These are all words that they had to learn. Some of them were part of their character education. They had like the words of the month. And other of the words were, like their vocabulary words. Like economics had been one of their vocabulary words. So these kids, they learned all about Kwanzaa and they loved it. They thought it was just the coolest thing. I remember I showed them like a picture of Dr. Karanga, the inventor of Kwanzaa. And, we talked about Kwanzaa and its origins. They all thought it was just the coolest thing ever. And so then at the end of the week, right before the break, we actually had a review, and I remember, we were going over the different holidays, and the kids, they raised their hands, and they had memorized. I didn't even remember myself what the 7 nights of Kwanzaa or the 7 principles of Kwanzaa were. These kids, they all knew them. They had them memorized. And then, someone in the class said, what's everyone's favorite holiday? And the kids all said Kwanzaa. They thought it was like the coolest thing. All right? It was kind of a weird thing, not what I'd expected at all. But I look back on that, and I think about the time period that was happening in. Now, this was 2005, and earlier that year, in August, we had just seen Hurricane Katrina, and, there was a lot of, racial frustration in the USA about how that had been handled. It was very heavy. And then in October, I remember the Millions More March, the anniversary of the Million Man March had taken place. And I myself, I was in this little town, very conservative, and I was getting into more radical ideas and coming to understand politics very differently than the way most of the people in my town did. And I remember I watched the C-SPAN video on the internet of Minister Farrakhan speaking at the Millions More March back in 2005. And, he quoted Mao and he quoted Fidel Castro or talked good about Fidel Castro. And, a lot of politics, very big politics were happening at that time. George Bush was president. It was his second term. He'd been reelected. And a lot of things were happening. And in my town in particular, in the lead up to that Christmas, Bill O'Reilly was on Fox News. Everyone in my town watched Fox News. And it was, there was this anger about all the other holidays. It was like, oh my goodness, how dare these people say Happy Holidays and not Merry Christmas. And I remember like a lot of the teachers at my school had put up posters in their classrooms with a list of stores people were not supposed to shop at because these stores would say Happy Holidays and not Merry Christmas. And there was like a petition at my school, among the high school students, demanding that the winter break in our student calendar be changed to Christmas break because they were angry about it. And there was this feeling that, oh my goodness, like Christians were under attack, and anyone who acknowledged any other holiday was, disrespecting Christians. And there was this angry right-wing politics associated with Christmas. And so when I approached the fourth grade teacher to do this lesson, she thought it was a great idea. And you know what? The kids loved it. And a few years later, I was back in my hometown, and I ran into one of these kids in the grocery store, one of the fourth graders who'd been in my class, and he said, "Hey, Mr. Maupin, you're the guy who taught us about Kwanzaa." He thought it was like the coolest thing. So these kids thought Kwanzaa was so cool, and it was great, and little things like that. I wasn't being an activist when I was there. I wasn't pushing any ideology on these kids. I was just teaching them about other holidays. But these kids, they thought Kwanzaa was so cool. They had fun. I had fun. I learned about Kwanzaa. They learned about Kwanzaa. We all kind of got along. Everyone in the room was white, and it was quite an amazing experience. It's one of the more interesting experiences in my life. I think about that today on the first day of Kwanzaa so many years later, and it puts a smile on my face. So happy holidays to everybody, no matter what you celebrate.